Hamdi Rifai, who is the Executive Director at the Council of United Syrians and Americans. Thanks so much, Hamdi, for joining us.
Good evening. Thank you for having me here.
Now, first let's start off with the simple question. Will this bill help end the war in Syria?
Oh, absolutely. The bill is very important, but not necessarily for the reasons that everyone seems to think. The U.S. has had sanctions on Syria for 30, 40 years. Syria is designated as a state sponsor of terrorism, and there's always been sanctions against Syria. In fact, some of the most famous legal cases in America have been sanctions violations cases against people violating those sanctions. So the idea of sanctions against Assad or Syria is not new, but these sanctions put more bite into it and put it back onto the front burner. So these sanctions are particularly important because they're very targeted also. So, I'm sorry.
You're right. President Donald Trump has been criticized for not deploying more troops to Syria to try and put an end to the regime.
Right.
Why does this bill work in favor of sending more troops?
Well, this doesn't necessarily work in favor of support of sending more troops. You know, a lot of people will say, oh, this is the first step towards the U.S. going to war with Syria in terms of increasing the level of kinetic activity on the ground or increasing the boots on the ground. But that's not true. In fact, this goes in the exact opposite direction. This says we don't need more war. We need a solution where Assad steps down or is removed and some justice is brought to Syria. So this puts sanctions on Syria that it can no longer buy airplane parts, military arms, computer parts for petroleum. It puts very targeted sanctions to stop Assad and to smother him financially.
But is it enough? I mean, if these sanctions are supposed to be placed on anyone deemed responsible for mass atrocities in the 8 years of this war, what does it take to bring these torturers and you know, to hold them to justice, to make them accountable? Is sanctions going to really do that?
Well, I don't know if sanctions are going to do that, but the one thing we know is that no one, whether we're talking about the U.S., England, anybody, has done enough for the Syrian people. This has been one of the most embarrassing situations for all countries worldwide, to have allowed close to 1 million people to have been mass murdered by Assad without any kind of justice or accountability of any kind. This is the first step towards accountability. So while it may not be a very big step, it's certainly a very important step. And I think all countries should take note of it because, for example, we've seen other countries gotten caught up in sanctions. If they don't want to get caught up in these sanctions, they need to get on board with these sanctions and assist the U.S. with them.
Okay, Hamdi, we'll have to leave it there for the time being. Thanks very much for coming in. Hamdi Rifai for us there.